final cat. Shout out to Word on the Street and most importantly, Mars fam. Shout out to y'all for tapping in. Somebody told me to react to this. I've seen a couple other Word on the Street videos too. This is Queen's Gang War, the story of Freaky Ty and the Lost Boys. Now I don't know too much about them. I'm not gonna play like I do. You know what I'm saying? But I guess this will help me find out a little bit about them. We ain't gonna talk too much. We're gonna get straight into the video.
Today's video is partially sponsored by Outs. Outs is a growing general store, providing essential items for those out active. Their featured item, this rechargeable lighter. In case you run out of fuel, keep this around and it will solve your problem. It's windproof and comes with waterproof protection in case it gets wet. Get your rechargeable lighter. The price has dropped to $14. Links in the description. Not going to waste any time in between, let's get into the story.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a
Shout out to
story today
Queens, too.
coming to you out of Queens. South Jamaica, Queens, also commonly known as the South Side, is a residential neighborhood located south of downtown Jamaica. Although a proper border has not been established, the neighborhood is a subsection of Greater Jamaica, bounded by the Long Island Railroad main line tracks, Jamaica Avenue or Liberty Avenue to the north, the Van Wyck Expressway on the west, Rockaway Boulevard on the south, and Merrick Boulevard on the east, adjoining the neighboring community of St. Albans. Other primary thoroughfares of South Jamaica include Baseley, Foch, Linden, Guy R. Brewer, and Sutphin Boulevards. Within these neighborhoods, there is a history dealing with multiple aspects. As far as the drug game, Guy Brewer Boulevard is notorious for its history of crime. Guy Brewer, aka Guy Brew, is a strip in Queens and had been referenced by rappers from Queens on a numbers of tracks. 50 Cent is notable for doing this, but before G-Unit and their times, you had another group hailing from Queens, the Lost Boys. Mr. Cheeks, who was mentored by his uncle Gil Scott Heron, along with bandmates Freaky Tah, Spig Nice and Pretty Lou, made up the Lost Boys. In fact, 50 Cent, although a bit younger than the Lost Boys, lived in close proximity to them, and some former background G-Unit members also came up under the Lost Boys. In 1995, the Lost Boys released their debut single, Lifestyles of the Rich and Shameless, charting on the Billboard Hot 100. The release landed them a record deal with Uptown Records. They contributed a single to the Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood soundtrack, titled Renee. The song became a major hit, breaking into the top 40 on the Hot 100 chart. The single also reached gold status in 1996. On June 4, 1996, the group released their debut album Legal Drug Money. The work was highly acclaimed and featured 5 Hot 100 hits, including their past singles, Lifestyles of the Rich and Shameless, Renee, Music Makes Me High, Jeeps, Lex Coos, Beamers and Benz, and Get Up. The album was certified gold in late 1996. They would also release a second album in '97, but by the third album, things would take a dark turn. Let's jump right into this one. 1998, Allentown, Pennsylvania. A man named Gustavo, aka Hector, was into the drug game. He had carried a gun to his meeting with another man, Calvin, because he was worried about unfamiliar surroundings. The gun would spark a dispute between the two, and things swiftly turned deadly. Chris, who said he had only known Calvin a couple of weeks, was hanging out with Hector and other friends when Hector asked him where he could get crack cocaine. Chris thought of Calvin. He didn't know whether Calvin sold drugs, but thought he could put Hector in touch with people who did. A friend drove Chris, Hector and another man to Calvin's building, located in the 300 block of 14th Street. Chris went in alone. Calvin told him he couldn't help Hector. But Hector kept pressing the issue, and Chris went upstairs to implore Calvin again. This time Calvin came outside, stood next to the car and talked with Hector. But Calvin suddenly became angry because he saw Hector's gun and accused his visitors of trying to set him up. Calvin went back inside. Irritated that Hector had brought the gun, Chris told him to leave, and he did. Then Chris went into the building to calm Calvin down. While they were talking, Hector came back and agreed to let Calvin frisk him. During the pat-down, which Calvin did with one hand while holding his own gun in the other, Hector suddenly put his right hand behind his back. Allegedly, Calvin immediately shot him in the forehead.
Damn.
Police would later find Hector critically wounded with a gun sticking out of his waistband. The 22-year-old New Yorker was pronounced dead a day later at Lehigh Valley Hospital.
Rest in
After
peace.
Kelvin shot Hector, Chris told Kelvin, "I don't see nothing, I don't know nothing." Back in Queens, there was an alleged turf war developing in the South Ozone Park area between followers of Lost Boyz and another group, the Hellraisers. There were also rumblings that Lost Boyz affiliates were being robbed. Don't get the idea that the Lost Boyz were merely victims, and with that, by December, a murder would take place. To the public, Kelvin's whereabouts would be unknown during December of 1998, but one thing is for certain, his half-brother, Michael, would be killed. Michael and Kelvin were allegedly aligned with the Hellraisers. Indeed, Hellraiser fam, 4 rappers with an extended circle of friends from the Liberty Avenue neighborhood in Jamaica, enjoyed a cordial relationship with the Lost Boyz, as they had done shows together in the earlier part of the 90s. However, somewhere along the line, a fallout had taken place. Then again, that might not even be the case. Anyway, Michael's death was allegedly in retaliation of a robbery committed against one of the members of the Lost Boyz. It was said that Michael had nothing to do with that robbery though. Either way, on the strength of his now deceased brother, Kelvin would later become notorious in New York City. And for what? Shooting and killing Lost Boyz member, Freaky Ta, outside a Queens hotel in March 1999. Now, there are some
Yo,
rappers who actually
I got a question for y'all that's from Queens. Cause I think I seen the video about this like a few days ago. Do y'all consider like the Flushing part and all like around them areas? Do y'all consider that Queens or no? Do y'all consider like most of like the hood Queens? Like, let me know what y'all think.
lived what they were rapping, but what people don't know is that Freaky Ta was one of them. With no social media at the time, it's not much to go off of, but the limited amount of pictures, and those that recall stories adding to the testaments of one's existence. With that, besides being known for his energy and distinctive voice, he was also a known gangster. Some say he might even be top 5 coming out of the Guy Brew area in Queens,
Damn.
putting on in his early days, getting money. On the night of March 28, 1999, the Horny
That's what
Boys, a
Queens is
group
known
known for
for.
having functions, were throwing a party. The Lost Boyz and affiliates were attending a wedding ceremony before deciding to go to the Horny Boys event as something to end the night off. It was also Cheek's birthday. Mr. Cheeks and some other party-goers had left the party a little bit earlier to drop off some people. By the time they spinned back to the Sheraton Hotel, lights from ambulance trucks filled their visions. Pulling back to the scene, someone had been shot. So,
Damn.
how did this happen? After Kelvin heard the Lost Boyz and their friends would be attending the party, he recruited Ryan and Ra to join him in staking out the party from a van outside the hotel. They were hoping to avenge the death of Kelvin's brother Michael, who had been killed a couple of months prior in December. It's unclear whether or not the target was present at the party that night. However, the 3 camped out the hotel until they spotted the victim. Some accounts say they were tired of waiting for the target and just shot the first person who exited. Others say it was intentional, but a mistaken identity. The party cleared out as the evening stretched into the early morning of March 28, and Kelvin, wearing a ski mask, left the van and walked into the crowd outside the hotel. He approached Ta and gunned him down at point-blank range. Afterward, he would fire several rounds before fleeing into the getaway vehicle in which they arrived. Allegedly, Ra was the driver, and Ryan aided and abetted the same. Ta, 27, was pronounced dead at the nearby Jamaica hospital. The 3, Kelvin, Ra, and Ryan, had criminal records of drugs and weapons charges.
Rest in peace to
3
everybody
days
from this
later,
video.
another
That's
murder
not
would take
surprising, bro.
place. Paget was gunned down at 111th Avenue and 128th Street on March 31, 1999. He was walking across the street at 11:15 p.m. when he was approached from behind by 2 men. He tried to run and escape by jumping a fence, but his clothing got caught in his attempt. He was shot several times, 6 bullets in the head, side,
Damn.
arm, and leg. A man named
6
Corey
bullets
was
in the head is
arrested 2 weeks
crazy.
later when he returned to court on an unrelated drug case. Allegedly, he was affiliated with the Lost Boyz. You may infer that this was a hit in retaliation for the murder of Freaky Ta. But the man arrested was written off as a want to be rapper acting on his own accord, might have did this for some sort of clout. Then again, that's just a narrative, and he could be an honorable dude. Regardless, we will just deal with the facts. He would end up getting a more lenient sentence later on down the line. Again, Freaky Ta's death would cause a ripple effect through the families and also cause the 3rd album to take a massive hit. Cheeks would have some success down the line with tracks like Lights Camera Action, Crazy Club Joint, but would ultimately fold back after losing his inspiration and members of his circle to jail and the cemetery. Jail would be the case for Spig Nice. In 2004 he would get sentenced to 37 years for armed robberies. Him and a group of dudes committed like 10 robberies around the Jersey area between December 2000 and April 16, 2002. The scheme, two men armed with handguns, would take control of the bank and move employees and customers at gunpoint to a confined area within the bank. The robbers coordinated their movements inside the bank with the getaway drivers waiting outside
Yo,
using walkie-talkies.
I ain't gonna lie. Back then, I mean, today's time is still bad as hell because like people just senselessly killing each other. But like back then was like no chill, robbing banks, freaking robbing jewelry stores, hitting 100K licks and all. Y'all was wild back then. I ain't gonna lie. That era got it. Like, and I think that's why some people reminisce on it to this day if they was from that era because that era was like kind of golden and just wow.
The robbers also used a stolen radio scanner to monitor police activity.
Damn,
He
that's
was
it.
released in July of 2021. But yeah, this about wraps it up for this quick Lost Boys story. Just wanted to
Shout out to Word on the Street. Shout out to Queens. You feel what I'm saying? I fuck with Queens. Shout out to Queens. You feel me? Um, Shout out to whatever hood you from. You feel me? But this ain't really tell too much on like they whole like rap shit for real for real. It just told like this. I'm gonna try to find something that really gives a documentary on a little upcoming and stuff like that. But with that being said, I appreciate y'all for the love and support. Love is love, and I'm gonna catch y'all in the next video.